Hi.
Hi, I'm Rose, somatic architect, and I am here with the lovely
Natalie, and I'm a shamanic practitioner, but also just entered into offering shamanic journeys here in Peru.
Amazing. So we want to break down today romantic love. So many of us grow up with a wound around receiving love, feeling like we're unlovable, that love is conditional. And Natalie and I have both gone on very deep journeys to heal that. And so we want to share some funny stories about what it looks like before you've healed it, talk about the healing journey, and ultimately how you call in that safe, secure, divine love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agree with that. I guess I can kick off with just saying, and I don't know if your experience is the same, but my partners in the past have just always, and I know this is down to my choice, right? And this is down to what we project, what our stories are, what our inner world is like.
Yeah. The patterns that we repeat.
Yeah, for sure. But my partners in the past, they were always in one way or another, and it wasn't always the same, but they were always unavailable in one way or another. And I didn't see that initially, but as I started to really look at my own journey and my own healing, I started to recognize that that was the pattern that I was choosing. And so what I really realized is that it's not actually about those people, it's about me. So that there was somewhere in myself that was still unavailable. And I remember getting that from different things. I'd had readings or, different experiences or opportunities to see. And I always really felt really resistant to that. I'm fully available. I've got an open heart. I'm loving.
I'm still loving.
Yeah. I'm this soft person. I've got a really soft heart, and it's really there waiting for this other soft person. But what I didn't realise is that, there was still quite a big door shut within me, in my heart. And I didn't necessarily go on a path to try and see where that was. It feels like the universe gradually, through different steps, allowed me to start seeing where that was. And what I realised was actually that big door was trust. For me, anyway. I don't know if that's the same for you. But yeah, that final piece of what is it really going to take to have a relationship where somebody is truly loving and I can receive that. I thought I was ready to receive that. And when you just keep, you get into those spaces where you think, I've done this work, I've healed this, I've healed that, I'm ready.
Where is he?
Yeah, like, I'm ready, I'm waiting, champing at the bit at the door. So for me, it was just that long path that came finally towards that final piece of full trust. Can I trust who's coming forwards to me? Can I trust that actually love is real and available? And I'll let you talk about yours first, but obviously then I've got my final piece of the story, which has come.
Ooh, then it gets
in
good.
This last 6 months,
Yeah, for me around love, so I was a child of divorce. I really learned that love was conditional. Like there were a lot of things that you had to do to be loved, and I kept playing that out. And so I also had this really interesting dichotomy where my mother and grandmother had this thing where it was like, you had to have a man to be safe. Like you had to have a man to be anything, to be worthy, but also you should never trust a man.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Should never trust a man, and you don't need no man. So it was this like really deep programming of both of those things, that I had to have a man, that I couldn't trust a man, and that it was like no matter what I did, it was not safe. And for me, my mother had been married a bunch of times, and so I was in a relationship from when I was 15 to when I was 34. My biggest break was like 3 weeks.
Right.
And I was married twice. So I was just like, I have a void and I'm going to fill it. And it was just, I would be in this relationship, I would see the potential of it, and I would chameleon, especially when I was young. Oh, you like hiking? I like hiking.
Yeah.
I've never been hiking. I ended up with blisters.
Yeah.
And that conditioning, that like love was conditional, I had to be a certain way, and I was so disconnected from myself that someone would come in and I would find myself, little things at first. like kind of becoming the version of me that I subconsciously thought would keep me safe, would keep me in partnership.
Yeah.
And I always felt so much pressure to lock it down. I was like, we've been together 5 minutes. Should we like get married?
Yeah.
I love you, you know? And it was like trying to lock it down from a place of insecurity and needing it to be a certain thing so that then I could be safe. I knew who I was in relation to who I was to this person. And I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then finally, when I was 34, I'm only 36 now, I was on this heartbreak roller coaster. I had left a marriage that was 6 years. I'd gone directly into a 7-month relationship that ended. I went like 3 weeks later directly into a 6-week and then a 5-week and then a 4-week relationship. And I was in this business mastermind, and I talking to this healer, this mentor, and I was just like, I was working as a healer, right? I could see my stuff. I could see the pattern. I knew I was doing it. It was like I felt totally out of control of being able to be alone by myself. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be alone. And then this whatever man would show up. And then hindsight, I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I know myself pretty well, but all of these quite unaligned, some more than others, and some very lovely if you're listening. But yeah, just having to hide parts of myself away. And then as I was going on my own deep healing journey, which to some extent I've been in since I was a child, I really accelerated it in 2020 when I was recovering from chronic pain, rediscovering these parts of myself. And then my journey over the last 5 years is really becoming uncompromising in who I am and that love for myself. And that's what it has allowed me to be in this surprise new relationship, in this partnership that really feels like I feel seen, I feel held, I feel heard. And even now, like last month, I noticed myself going into that chameleon mode of wanting to go to that place of like, oh, well, I think he's going to like me better if he loves motorcycles. Me, terrified. Do not want, hate. And I was like, so, okay, I'm terrified of motorcycles, but for you, I would try. And then a couple weeks later, I'm like, I have a confession to make. I'm not going to try. I know I've tried it. I actually hate it. So I don't want to. And he was like, okay.
But really recognizing yourself and your needs, right? And I feel like what you just said there about finally being seen, being heard, and being loved in a way that really feels good. For me, that's us doing that first. Totally. Finally seeing ourselves, finally seeing what we really need, and finally seeing the part of ourselves that really wants all of those things. And I guess I can really resonate with what you just said about, you know, I'm a healer too, and you see these patterns in yourself. You know, if you were talking to a client, what would you advise? And in some ways, it makes it even worse and even harder because you kind of then put the pressure on yourself. But I'm a healer. I know how to work these things. Why am I still?
I should know better.
Yeah, all this pressure. So yeah, I can really resonate with that too. Interesting that you talk about. So I'm also from a divorced set of parents, but I went the opposite way. So well, actually, not when I was younger. I didn't have much space in between relationships. But as I've got older, and I'm quite a bit older than you, so maybe that's the piece, I've had more and more time in between to really be with myself. But what that actually started to develop was then I was nervous well, I know what my relationships were like in the past. I don't do it right. I always choose the wrong person. So I'm not putting myself in a place where I'm going to choose again. So there was more and more space in between my relationships, where I was just, actually, I'm all right on my own. Actually,
this is good. You can actually stay over there.
I'm okay, but more and more I started to feel, no, I am okay, but equally, I want someone to share my world with. I want someone to love. I want someone to give and offer what I've got, and I want to receive. So I started to realise that doesn't have to be a really codependent, I need a man. It wasn't that. It was actually, I have a space where I want a man. I want to offer, I want to be in partnership with somebody, I want to share. And so I think it was probably about 2 years ago, I'd been on my own 3 or 4 years and started to feel, I could feel the energy of myself opening and that possibly someone was coming towards me. And that immediately made me feel quite, I don't know if I want it. I don't know if I want someone. What if I make the same mistake? I always choose badly, blah, blah. You know, all these stories that we play in our mind. But for some reason, that also felt like some sort of other momentum that was happening as well. That I wasn't being forced, but that there felt like, almost like this kind of river of something that was going towards saying yes.
There was enough opening that you're like, okay, it's scary, but I'm still moving toward it.
Yeah, like, okay, let's see. And I wasn't forcing anything. I wasn't actively trying to go out at the weekend and seek somebody, you know, it wasn't like that. I just felt this, some kind of door was opening. And it wasn't until I came here in Peru last year, where I had a reading from a lady online who had been recommended by a friend who had also had a couple of readings. And she talked about this new energy that was coming in of a partner who would be very different to the types of partners that I'd experienced in the past. And she said that you have already been doing lots of healing. She said, but there's a final door that needs to open. And I did know that was all about trust. And I'd also had, because I'm quite visual, so I'd had a few sort of visions of my own of someone coming in, someone who was younger than me, which felt immediately, oh gosh, don't know about that. So I already started setting up some of these things that I felt were okay and things that weren't okay. And various other things sort of came together and different clues along the way. Which I felt ready for and thought, I'm going to meet somebody here in Cusco in Peru. And then my 5 months was up, my volunteer 5 months in the retreat centre here, and I hadn't met anyone, so I was just, okay. And it was only when I got back to the UK on a dating app, just somebody that I probably would never have considered. He's a lot younger than me, he is Peruvian. But there was something in my head, when I saw his profile, there was just something that said, give this guy a chance. And this is the place where I feel like the biggest learning has happened in me and the biggest healing, that I, on 2 occasions, was actually, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. No, we started talking and he seemed like he had all these things, and it was very early on, so I was really, okay, let's just slow down. And it's also on the internet. I could be projecting this big story of what I want and who he possibly is onto him, and possibly he's nothing like that. So I was really cautious. On 2 occasions, I stopped the chat and just said, I can't do this, thinking inside, you're too young, you're not this, you're not that. Or I'm making it all up in my head. Because I'd not had, I'd met people online before, but I'd never had a continued, okay, he's in another country, let's just see where this goes. I just felt that wasn't possible. But again, this time, just for whatever reason, it was possible, and something was really goading me to just carry on. I could hear my guidance saying, give him a chance, like listen, connect. All these things that possibly if I was talking to someone else, I would say, just be patient. Don't judge, don't put obstacles in the way.
Let it unfold.
Yeah, before anything is even started. So that's what I did. And I ended up, we spoke for between 3 and 4 months, and then I was due to come back to Peru. So we arranged that I would stay with him for a week when I came back to Peru, which I did. And a few months later, he moved here to Cusco with me, and we lived together. Woo! Yeah, and I know you've got something of a similar story, but I guess the end point of that is that he is all the things that he was online. It seems I didn't project anything onto him. He is that. He's very open emotionally, very different to what I've known before. And even though he's a lot younger, he's actually mature-wise probably matches me. in a way that he's very supportive, he's very interested in what I do and what I think and feel. Actually, that's the biggest thing. Someone can say, oh, I really like what you do, yeah, oh, that's interesting, and listen, but he's really interested in how I feel at any one time. And that's not about he is overly sort of, oh God, you've got to be all right. I just mean he's interested, he's connected to what I'm doing, what my dreams are, what my thoughts, what I believe. He's just different to what I've known before. And I think going back to what we said about ultimately that's us, that I'm really invested in my dreams now. I'm really invested in how I think and feel.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is the difference, that I've developed and grown that in me. And so now I'm seeing that outside, externally, in the person that I've drawn towards me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I know you've got...
Yeah, it's so
of a
interesting
similar-
what you're saying about we do this healing work and it's what reflects back to us. I would add it also becomes like an unspoken minimum standard.
Yeah.
Because it's such a cliche to be like, just love yourself. But
What does that
like,
mean? Yeah,
what does that
is
mean?
What is that?
And this goes back for me to healing that wound of love being conditional, that I get to love myself unconditionally. I get to be my biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
I get to notice my inner critic and work with her to see what is she actually trying to save me from.
Yeah.
And it's usually fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, like fear of outshining. And when I met my partner, it's funny that you had this like full heart clearing before. I met him and I had just slammed my heart shut. So I had just had this short relationship and it was, and pretty shortly thereafter, like exploded in a million pieces. And I was like, right, can't trust myself, can't trust my intuition. Men are in fact not to be trusted. And this man came into my life, and for the first 24 hours we were friends, and then it was like, oh, this could be a date. And I'm like, okay. let's see, let's have a look. And receiving love in this way, I've never in my life been with a man who was so emotionally connected and available and also resilient.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's like, oh, I'm having an emotion, now I'm shriveled and I'm on the floor, right? Because I'm very emotionally available and open and resilient. But to have that mirrored to me and to have him be able to be attuned to me, to be like, oh, you're thinking, oh, you're having a feeling. Like, I am having a feeling. Yeah. Usually I could just be in a mask because most men that I had been with wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that is such an interesting continued learning for me, because it's like I'm basically learning healthy attachment externally after I'd learned it internally, which I guess before I just had no healthy attachment.
Yeah.
Learning that internally, becoming more and more securely attached. I'm not perfect. Again, a couple weeks ago, I was like, I'd get on a motorcycle no, I wouldn't. But that journey, and he's showing me those places where I'm still constricted against love sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because the same with me, by no means is it a perfect journey. And what's the word perfect anyway? It's a learning journey. It's a journey of opening, of stretching the muscle of my heart. And same. I've still got issues coming up, my old issues that would play out maybe slightly differently with people in the past. But what I'm seeing now is in the past, would slam shut very quickly. And what I'm seeing now is gradually, I'm still doing that, but I'm not as tightly shutting, and I'm opening a lot quicker. So it's not really about, when we talk about the perfect man, the perfect love situation, that's not about just being this amazingly open, or some people are, maybe, I don't know, maybe if that's not their trigger. But for me, what I've seen is that my partner doesn't retreat. He doesn't really retreat. So he stays present when I've got my things happening, and we talk. Discussion is a massive part of our process. And he's also got his own things coming, so of course he's on his journey too. So I'm reflecting things back to him that he's never seen before, and he's reflecting back to me things I've not seen in my relationship before. So it's a real double process of both of us learning to walk alongside each other.
Yeah.
But the difference being that he is willing to stay open, and he stays present, and I'm willing in other ways to reflect back things to him that he hasn't seen in a relationship before. So I give him safety, I give him belief, I see him and I believe in him, and I'm helping him to see himself and believe in himself, so I can see that that's his piece, strong piece that's in this relationship. But yeah, I mean, I many times I've had to kind of just explain to him that I'm like a river, and or like water. I'm not the same thing all the time. I'm very changeable. And what he's learning is that that's not an issue, that actually it's not for him to fix that, or it's not his problem, that that's just what moves through me, and that that's not an issue. We are these two containers on the outside, and then all this other stuff moves in the middle. And that's something that can either be delved into or not necessarily. It doesn't have to be, you know. And I just feel like you were saying, that, you know, the acceptance not only inside but outside, so that these start to match, and these two experiences start to mirror each other, and they change us into a different attachment, a different way of perceiving ourselves and each other. I think that, you know, there's so much for me anyway, even just in these last 6 or 8 months, that has really started to transform and really starting to pave the way for a different foundation for how I love and how I see myself and others, I think. Yeah. So yeah, it's but it's an ongoing journey, right?
Yeah, I think that's it's a different experience and a lens that I've come to be in a loving relationship in this iteration. Like before, it really felt like, you know, I need to find this man and he's gonna make me feel whole and complete. Guess what? That shit doesn't work. It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And when I went on this journey, so I was single for 1.5 years and worked with a mentor and like really going deep. And I met her when I was on that end of the heartbreak roller coaster, and I was just like, she was like, there's no way for you to waste this container. And it was it was the biggest investment I've ever made in myself. The best investment as well. She's like, the only way for you to waste this container is if you keep doing this with men.
Yeah.
She just took the mic and was like, I was like,
when you get those statements that somewhere in there is like, I absolutely know you're telling the truth, but the rest of you is like, what the hell?
Yeah, that was a big investment and I don't want to waste it. And that was a part of me deciding I was done with those patterns, that I was willing to invest in myself, to do the healing work, to come out the other end. Because basically when I started with her, I was like, I just feel like I'm triggered all the time. Like intellectually, I got it, I see my patterns, but I'm popping out of my body all the time. Like I'm doing this insane dance with men that I've met, you know, that it's like, woo, this is a 5-week, you know, roller coaster that's basically on fire in the back. And I'm like, maybe this will be okay.
Yeah. Do you think though that there's a really big part of, am I worth it? When we finally decide I'm worth this, I'm worth the investment, I'm worth the change, I'm worth the difficulty it takes when you really want to go back into your old pattern and you can feel it in your whole body.
Yeah, your body's like, we're going back.
So there's all of that as well. It's not just a simple choice, is it? It's like your whole system is invested in the old way, in the old pattern. So yeah, for me as well, there was a real turning point, a choice point of, do I want to feel like this anymore? No, I don't.
Yeah.
And even though that still comes, now it's easier for me to see, oh, this is arriving. And it was a little bit like years ago when I first met the shamanic work, one of the biggest pieces I changed, I used to be quite an angry person. So I was an angry mother. I was just angry, full of rage inside. And actually it was my daughter that was the instigator of me. I want to be different. I don't want to be like this. And when I first started to change that pattern, gosh, it was so difficult. The rage in me would just, like a fire, be in my body. And for me to really choose not to interact with that was difficult. But I think that we do that with all of our issues and triggers, that they're a real physical, neurosomatic therapist, so you'll know about that. we are invested physically in that. Our nervous systems, everything is invested in these patterns that we build and create. So for me, one of the biggest turning points was when I started to decide I don't want to grab onto, or not even grab onto it. It was almost like there wasn't any choice, this river or fire. And so that first times of starting to decide, actually, I'm not going to go with that. I'm not going to get carried along in that river, or I'm not going to get burned in that fire. I'm going to start to choose something different. And I feel like that was, for me, definitely one of the big turning points inside this loving person, this loving container. Yeah. It gave me the space to, for the first time, choose, actually, I don't want to go with that. And even though it wasn't, I'm not saying that it just all disappeared, it was just that choice. That was the first piece. Choosing not to just get carried along. And I think what I'm seeing reflected in you is when you chose, actually, I'm not going to keep just going into this same pattern with these guys. I'm going to actually invest and listen to what this woman, this therapist has got to say. And that's big, isn't it? That when we first decide for ourselves, no, I'm doing something different.
And that it's possible. I think I had lived with it so long, and I had done so much healing work.
Yeah. Same.
And it was like, I remember when I had started, I was maybe a month in to working with this mentor, and I was having this insane moment with the last of this short, crazy relationships. And I was like, I just feel insane. Like, my mind is going 1,000 miles a minute. I'm having all of these, what I know to be insane thoughts. Like, just craziness. I was like, I just need you to tell me that it's going to get better.
Yeah.
And I think this is the thing that so many people who have done so much healing work, we sometimes miss the mark, is finding the right support to hold us to fall apart.
Yeah.
And I had seen therapists, I had looked at it for a long time to try to find someone who could hold me, and I was just like, there just isn't anyone, right? Because I'd done so much work, and I think finding her, and I could feel her energy, and I was like, I want to work with you. And she was like, well, let me tell you about what I do. And the process was like, I don't care.
I can feel,
I don't care if you give me a hamster and tell me to hold it above my head. Like, I want to feel the way that I feel that you feel.
Yeah.
And that's another piece of finding someone who embodies what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's super, super important.
And
people
going
talk
on that
about
journey.
Your transformation journey. But
are they living it?
Are they living it? Have they met that in themselves in some way? And I think it's only when people have met that in themselves that they can hold that container for change. And the other thing, I don't know if this is the same for you, but I felt that fundamentally this was who I was. It was part of, not completely, but it was part of who I am. That it wasn't something that it was possible for me to change. That I'm an angry person. Yeah. That was my story. So that again, and the same with relationships. I'm a person that doesn't do very good in relationships. I don't have the right partner. But even that, it's so contradictory to the work that we do and that we know all of this is all story and pattern.
Right.
So there isn't anything that isn't possible to change. So why would I believe or invest in that? For me, it's the real interesting piece that I feel like in those places we're so disempowered that we don't believe it's possible, that we can't connect to that empowered energy in ourselves that says, this is really possible to change.
Well, it's survival. It's our body being like, the best way to survive is for you to
do this. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then we come across these people that initially they are the ones externally that start to embody this change for us until we can internalize it and start to see the change and wow, it's possible. I can do something differently. I can choose differently. I can act differently. I can respond instead of react. So all of those things. But I find it, for me anyway, that even though I know all that stuff, it's almost like the journey itself doesn't happen in that mental space
at all.
Okay, I'm going to start to become empowered now. I'm going to make a different choice. I'm going to this, I'm going to that. It's not a mental space. Yeah. Even though mentally you are processing it, it feels like that comes from somewhere else.
Yeah, it's processed in the heart and the body, and that's where in my experience with myself and working with clients, getting into the body and reconnecting is so important.
Yeah.
So if you were to give someone 30 seconds of advice, if they're in that place where they're like, I keep bringing all these unavailable men, what would you say to them?
I would say, first of all, give yourself the space. Like you said, you know, that you can't make this change in relationships. If you keep coming into a relationship, you can't make that change. So I would say, give yourself the space. I would say to anybody that everything is possible, even when it doesn't feel that way. So, and like you've just said, find yourself somebody that you can really resonate with, somebody who can give you the support, not just tell you things to do, but energetically, with their presence, they start to resonate what it is that you're working towards. So when you can feel that presence, when you're in the presence of that presence, it's that piece that starts to come into your field that tells you, it's almost like that unspoken communication that says this is possible and this is what it looks like or feels like.
Yeah. Similarly, to find whatever path that is, like you can reach out to one of us, you can reach out to a book, whatever that path is, but that we're only here on this planet for a very short amount of time, and whatever healing growth you need in order to enjoy your time here, to live your life purpose, to let in the love and give the love you deserve to invest in yourself and really invest the time, energy, money, whatever it takes to step into that next version of expansion.
Yeah, definitely.
And that it keeps going. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, sending you all so much love. Again, I am Rose Covenant, somatic architect. You can find my contact details below. And Natalie?
I'm Natalie Gray, and you can find my contact details, Natalie Gray Soulwork, or my website is nataliegray.org. Like you've just said, if you want to reach out to either of us, very welcome. We'd be really interested to work with anyone who wants to work in this way or even discuss what we've discussed. Reach out. It would be really beautiful to connect with any and all of you.
So much love. Bye.